Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored, as I mentioned in the beginning, to be having with me in the studio for tonight Dr. Alaa Khalifa. Thank you very much once again. As we did see the past report about the Grand Egyptian Museum, what is unique about the museum? What do we expect on the 3rd of July?
The museum, if you call it what is unique about the museum, the entire museum is all unique. It's it's a site of engagement. It's a cultural hub. And such a museum like this that took such a long time and a lot of investment, and the way how the exhibitions galleries inside the museum have been arranged to tell a story of an ancient civilization. And that's what is unique about the museum. The museum, not only that it's the largest exhibition place for the ancient Egyptian civilization in the world, but it's a cultural hub. It is a beacon that is supposed to be giving light of culture to a lot of Egyptians, understanding more about their past. You see, we have a stereotyping of museums are places we visit when we go on school trips, or museums are places where tourists are visiting. It's about time that we change that culture. It's about time that we get, by the opening of the new museum, open up a whole of a new cultural hub and an engaging those young generations to know better their history, to know better the stories, the storytelling. What you said in that report was so important, the storytelling, the way how you tell about the historical archaeological artifact. That's what it counts. So the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum on the 3rd of July, which is a great day that we all cherish in our heart, it's a start for a new cultural journey for Egypt, a way how Egypt is telling the rest of the world, this is me, this is the history, this is my history, this is my contribution to the world, this is where history all started, this is where history all begins. And it's for its citizens, it is a cultural engagement opportunity where we engage the new generations more about their past, and which can also tell them about the present and the future. I think it's a great opportunity that we get everyone engaged. It's not only going to be a magnet to more travelers to come to Egypt, but also for more Egyptians to go and discover more about their culture, more younger generations that can show respect to what our ancestors did thousands of years ago. In my opinion, that's the unique thing about opening the museum. It is the unique opportunity that it's offering today. It's starting a new era of cultural engagement and historical value.
And Doctor, you mentioned that it took a long time in the making, the Grand Egyptian Museum. I think about 30 years. That's a very long time to be waiting for. Yes,
but
the idea itself.
When we started, by the time choosing the location, getting the funding and all of that, it took a long time because the plan had been altered several times. And all in order to reach the perfection, and of course thanks for all the support from various governments and also from the Egyptian government and from the various ministers. All of them had one goal, is to make the Grand Egyptian Museum stands for its word, grand. It's the largest, the biggest, the most impressive. I think it will be one of the icon museums in the world, such as the Louvre, such as the Hermitage, and we want to have that museum not only to be a house for tourists to come and visit. We don't want that only, we want also the museum to be more engaging to to Egyptian new generations, to the internet. I would call them the internet generation, the Z generation and the Z generation. We want them to learn more about their culture, want them to learn more about the kings, their ancestors, want them to learn about the discoveries. We want to ignite inside of them you know, the love of that history, the love of their identity. This is their DNA that they need to recognize. They need to have such a love and engagement with the museum at all times.
On the other hand, we have known about the largest museum in the world, but it is dedicated for a single civilization, which is ancient Egypt. And you mentioned the importance of storytelling.
Yes.
How do you see storytelling combined with ancient Egypt, thousands of years of civilization? How can the end product be like?
Storytelling is a great part of the culture of the touristic experience and the cultural experience. That if you want to emphasize an idea, if you want to emphasize a brand, if you want to emphasize a concept, then the way how you tell the story is the way how people get it. So storytelling art is when you use it in museums, it definitely can showcase what you want. Is stories about heroes, stories about wars, stories about conquer, defeat, stories about discoveries. The way how you get the story being told through immersive shows, through 3D or 5D shows, through AI, AR and VR. All of these different technologies combined together within the storytelling technique and utilized into the museum will tell a different story. In the past, when you used to go to the older Egyptian museum, which is a great place, 125 years old, and I used to enjoy my time when I used to go to that museum and telling people about these different artifacts. I have to tell you that it was such a pleasurable time telling the story of each piece in there, the story of discovery, the story of movement, the story of exhibition and everything. Now with the modern technique of lighting, with the modern technique of technology, with the AI or with the VR, with the way how you get the pieces to speak to themselves, to speak by themselves.
Yes.
You know,
to tell their story.
To tell their story
Yes.
in front of the visitor will make it far more interesting for younger generations and for older generations as well. But what counts, the older generations get it. But what we want the engagement of the younger generation. The more, you see, what happens with museums is that when you get younger generations attracted to a single type of a museum or a famous museum, whether there is a famous icons exhibited in the museum or whether there is some treasures in the museum, when younger generations, you know, attempt to visit that museum, they remember it for the rest of their life. And when they remember it for the rest of their life, they still carry these wonderful memories. And then they tell their you know, counterparts, their families, they act like a walking advertising for that museum. So every time it's like, hey, let's go to the Grand Egyptian Museum, I will show you the treasures that I have seen when I was young. So that's what happens. When you tell the story right, it helps you in engaging the soft power of the country where that museum is. It engages people will start to recognize what does it mean, a DNA for Egyptian culture. You know, we are ancient Egyptians. Whether you like it or not, we are.
Yes.
We speak a different language. 60% of that language that we're speaking right now is taken from the ancient Egyptian language.
Yes.
Okay. Our DNA, we look a little bit different than what we see depicted on the walls. That's not true. We do exactly the same thing. And if you go down to Upper Egypt, you know, middle of Egypt to the Delta, we all ancient Egyptians with various smaller variations from here and there, but we all descendants from ancient Egypt. So this is our heritage. Those are our ancestors, and we always be in debt for our ancestors, creating such a wealth, not only for us, but for the rest of the world. And this is why we have to engage, we have to understand, we have to transfer that bride to the younger generations so they can see what their ancestors did and they continue the legacy. This is what we want people to do. Look at where Egyptians nowadays around the world. 7 million people around the world and top successful expats everywhere around the world. That DNA didn't come from nothing. It came from their ancestors. It came from the way how we have a deep knowledge that has been transferred to us through generations and generations. And 90% of what we have today of these ancient Egyptian artifacts are all made because of modern Egyptians have actually looked for it, and because they'd study it, and because they helped, discovering it. Everything that in modern Egypt today, it resonates from ancient Egypt. So we have to realize this in order to keep the legacy, continue the legacy of having this country to become the beacon of science and culture across the world.
And you mentioned, Doctor, as well, that there is the older Egyptian Museum in Tahrir Square. How different will it be, the GEM, the Grand Egyptian Museum?
That's a huge difference.
Yes.
Indeed, the older one had almost like 120,000 pieces of artifacts and objects.
It was overcrowded.
Almost half of them were in the basements, and because there is no space to exhibit them. So basically we were solving a problem of exhibition space by tripling the space of the museum, but at the same time it is not only about tripling the space and finding extra space for these wonderful artifacts and the treasures to be exhibited, but also what we're doing, we're incorporating modern museum techniques and in exhibiting these unique artifacts by refining how the story is being told, by describing a different narrative, for these artifacts, by looking how to engage younger generations. Look at the museum. If you go through all the galleries, in each of these galleries there is an incorporation of technology in there. That didn't happen in the older museum. It's air conditioned. The older museum was not air conditioned, so,
especially in the summer, it was very hard to be there.
It's a huge advancement. It's a huge it's a leap, I would say, in the way how we are exhibiting our, and of course there are other beautiful museums in Egypt. The Luxor Museum is an amazing museum, the Nubian Museum in Aswan, and there are so many other museums. There's open museums down in Karnak, for example. But all of these different museums, they of course still part of the story, but what is unique about the Grand Egyptian Museum, it tells the entire story.
Yes, and speaking of the story, we'll be heading to the other report, or the second report of the Daily Debate for tonight, focusing on the UNESCO, which listed the Grand Egyptian Museum as one of the most beautiful museums to be visiting, and that was in 2024 with the soft opening. So what about the official inauguration of the GEM on the 3rd of July in 2025? We'll be awaiting what will be happening with excitement. We'll be having more details in the upcoming report. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight Dr. Alaa Khalifa, the international tourism marketing expert. Thank you very much once again for being with us tonight. Of course, everyone is looking forward to the GEM, to the inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum, but more specifically, the collection, the entire collection of Tutankhamun. What is the significance of having the entire collection at once, despite what happened at the Egyptian Museum for years or maybe decades?
The space where we actually had in the older museum in Tahrir Square to exhibit the entire collection was not enough to exhibit that collection. So many of them were still in the stores and kept for renovation. Many of them were not out of it because there's so many duplicates in the tomb. And once you have all of these things come out of the storage rooms and then move to the new museum, when you're talking about 5,700 pieces of artifacts and objects, that's a lot.
Yes.
Especially when you have a lot of Egyptian statues, in large number that are represented all the days of the year. Almost 400 of these statues.
Just to serve the king in the afterlife.
Just to serve the king. 365 of them to represent 365 days of the year, and for each 10 days of the year, which actually the 10 days in ancient Egypt, they consider them as a 1 week. So the 1 week time. It was not like 7 days, it was actually 10 days. At that time, they had like a supervisor for each 10 days, for each of the 10 of those statues. But anyway, can take you up to almost 400 of these statues. Plus you have number of coffins, interlaced coffins one inside the other. You have masks, you have a lot of artifacts and amulets and things like that. And on the other hand, providing an entire exhibition, not only for the Tutankhamun tomb, but also for the other tombs where we found ancient Egyptian jewels discovered. Tanis tomb, we discovered a whole treasure in Tanis, a whole royal tomb, called the Royal Tombs of Tanis, and they all exhibited there. The ancient Egyptian amulets that have been found in various locations from even earlier dynasties. So all of these things have been exhibited in a jewelry room, which is much more enlarged, bigger, and it can tell the story in a much better way. But let me take you to another thing before you jump to the next question.
Yes.
How we market that museum. You're bringing me, I'm a marketeer.
Yes.
And I can tell you how we market it by putting engagement, by getting younger generations engaged through social media, through that museum, by taking the right bits of the story and telling that bits of the story and making the full pieces of the puzzle, you know, connected together through the museum, by telling them one by one, king by king, story dynasty by dynasty, how things are moving around. By let's inaugurate the museum, and after 1 year go to Hollywood and get those people who did Night at the Museum to do Night at the Grand
Ben
Museum.
Stiller.
Yes, Night at the Grand Museum. You know, come do Night at the Grand Museum. They're not going to do anything in the museum. They're going to build a mock-up for the museum. But then
the publicity itself.
The publicity that this will be broadcasted to almost 1 billion people around the world. Look at what Night at the Museum did to the Museum of Natural History in New York.
And they had one in England
too. And then they did part 2. But look at that. If you do Night at the Grand Egyptian Museum, like continuing the series,
if everything comes to life,
each one of those ancient Egyptian kings coming to life and telling his story, you know, through a dramatic story and a funny and engaging and family-oriented. Think beyond the box. Think how we get, and I'm telling everyone in Hollywood, you know, think 1 year from now to Night at the Grand Museum, and you would never regret it. It's going to be a hit, big hit, to market that museum across the world. Plus other marketing technique, traditional, non-traditional, digital, engaging, immersive, so many other marketing techniques. It's a whole new strategy, and I can put a whole thing and I can show it to you in the next episode.
Yes, hopefully. But one important part of it is the social media, because
social media
everything is happening on social media nowadays, with the influencers, with the YouTubers, they are here nowadays. How can we be dealing with the influencers, more specifically the people themselves, the people of Egypt, not just the people who are affiliated with the Ministry of Tourism or the Antiquities or the Grand Egyptian Museum, the people themselves, the culture? Do you think that we need a change of that?
Do you know what's the best content you can create? It's the user-generated content. It's a content created by you, by me, by somebody else who's visiting the museum. It's a cultural experience. It's the touristic experience. It's the review. It's the opinion. It's the title. Is the concept, is the understanding, is called user-generated content. So instead of just going and say, hey, I have the best pieces, I have the best exhibition, no, let people say, hey, I've seen the best pieces, I have done the best exhibition, I have walked through this, I have lived the story, I have lived the experience. And so when people do user-generated content to other people, that content becomes more credible, and it starts to generate other content. And so you start to create endless loops of content about the project. And I'm telling you this because that's what destination marketing organizations around the world are using right now. They are depending on a user, on a third party, user created content. They have user generated content. They engage influencers, as you said.
Yes.
They engage, they create reels and shorts that look like they were made by normal people. Not that ones that are top highly end professional, no, natural. Because that's where people are mostly engaged. You know, they found out that the videos that are made naturally by people and that represent more and more natural moments are more engaging than those who are like articulated videos or shorts or reels. So in other words, there are so many ways. One of them, of course, is social media engagement and family-oriented techniques, how to get families, connected to the museum. Dedicate a free day for senior citizens in the middle of the week to visit the museum. Dedicate and some of the occasions where you have Mother's Day, Father's Day, and any of the, open the museum for free for younger generations to go and visit. There's so many ways. Create membership clubs. There's so many ways to get people engaged. This is what happens at the Louvre Museum, happens in the Hermitage, happens in other museums around. British Museum, the same thing. So the Grand Egyptian Museum is a unique opportunity for us to engage with younger generations. And I'm telling you, for 1 year from now, let's hear about night at the Grand Museum.
Yes, and finally, Doctor, how do you think this will be affecting the Egyptian economy, tourism in general, and the inauguration of the gem?
As a museum itself, it's not supposed to be like an entity that generates income.
Yes.
Okay, museums, you spend billions or you spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a museum, and it's not going to. This is not a commercial project, but it resonates its effect through the overall image of the country. When countries are recognized by 3 or 4 main icons. These icons, I would summarize them in the following. An airport. So when you land in a country's airport, that's the first impression and the last impression.
Yes.
And that's the most important thing. And secondly, museums, because museums are housing that shows culture. Whether that museum could be a cultural museum, could be an antiquities museum, could be a museum. So the more museums you have in a country, the more famous the country into the, can be attractive.
Yes.
And I'll be quickly.
No, take your time.
And the next thing is the natural historical sites, which is like places for temples and battles, places for tombs, and all of these archaeological sites. And the third thing is the natural sites, which is like landscapes, beaches or corals or mountains or any of these things, so or deserts or any of these things. So once you have all of these 4 elements and they are all resonating together, you create a soft power for the country. And once that soft power is implemented within those travelers, see, a lot of destination marketing organizations around the world, they get it right now. And a lot of them, they don't get it. People think, okay, let's promote travel to our destination by promoting travel to every tourist coming to our destination. No, we're actually promoting travel to our destination to tourists who are actually coming for our destination for the first time. But we want, after that, retention of those who have come for the first time to come back. So it's a marketing and retargeting. So we have to acquire more people and to maintain those who come before, give them the right experience. All goes to the 4 elements, as I'm telling you. Airports, museums, natural history, archaeological sites. Once they have a refined first-hand experience, then they will always come back and bring their friends, and so we can reach that target of 30 million tourists every year.
Yes, hopefully by the year 2030. Dr. Alaa Khalifa, the international tourism marketing expert, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
You're welcome. It's a great pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate. However, I will be leaving you with one last report about the visit by the Egyptian Orthodox Parliamentary Assembly visit to St. Catherine's Monastery in the country. We'll be having more details in the upcoming report. Thank you for watching and goodbye.